Now, I know you might find this hard to believe, but it has been a while since my 20s. And yet there are still some books that I've read in my 20s that have stayed with me all of my life. So today I'm handpicking 20 books that you should absolutely read in your 20s. I'm going to go through them quickfire style, but don't worry, you can find all the books I talk about down below in the description. No time to waste, let's start reading 20 books in our 20s. And let's start off, why not, with a romance. Now, don't click away just yet, because this is not just any romance. This is literary fiction. It is character-driven, psychological, it has lots of perception in it, and it just captures that feeling of trying to start your life, trying to get into a new social group, and failing. And this is Normal People by Sally Rooney, and I love this book. This is the kind of book I would have loved to be able to read in my 20s-something when I just ventured out and went to live on my own. It has some great character work, characters that you will absolutely love and possibly hate. Normal People by Sally Rooney. And then we have an absolute classic. Now, if you've ever wanted your own personal poet who gives you life advice, then all you have to do is keep this book somewhere in a back pocket. This is Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke, and it is everything that the title promises. This is a series of letters that the older poet Rilke sends to a younger poet who came to him to ask advice about how to become a poet. But it is so much more than that. It gives you advice on life itself, on finances, on love and relationships, on your place in the world. Despite its age, is often surprisingly modern in its viewpoints. Rilke does not just give well-meant, often useful advice to his young poet friend, he also gives it to you as a reader. So if you ever wanted a personal classic coach, then Rilke is the way to go. Letters to a Young Poet. And then we have another contemporary fiction, and it is a sketch and overview of our young lives from when we are children all the way up to university and beyond. Again, it deals with finding your place in the world, it deals with those work floor relationships, it deals with the first love. It is an incredibly beautiful book with some excellent character work again, and it is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabriel Zevin. It is emotional, it is relatable, it is evocative, and it is some absolute beautiful prose. Highly recommend this one, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabriel Zevin. The next one is a memoir, but it is not a memoir as you know it. It is funny, it is engaging, it is at times heartbreaking, and it is almost an excellent map, a roadmap to growing up, finding love, finding your first job, and dealing with being an adult. I've seen it being described as Bridget Jones' diary, but then through, and that is an apt description. There were times that I had to laugh out loud with this one, but mainly because many of those things were so recognizable. It is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, and it is almost quintessential reading for anyone in their 20s. If you sometimes struggle with cooking for one, or navigating the office floor politics, or just being friends with a lot of people that you don't really know anymore, and that first love, well, then this is the absolute book for you. Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, just pick it up. The next one is another memoir, but a whole different kind of beast. In Rootbound, Rewilding a Life, we meet our author Alice Vincent. Now Alice is a music journalist just out of university, has her first job, ventured out to live on her own, lives with her boyfriend's first real stable relationship, and then everything goes wrong. Relationship breaks, she's not happy in her job anymore, and she simply does not know what to do with her life. Now living out of her suitcase, just crashing on someone's couch, she finds herself to be uprooted, and she really longs for that sense of home and that sense of happiness. And one of her earliest memories is the happiness she found, the homeliness she found in her grandfather's garden. So she starts to rebuild her life and reroute again through plants. It all starts with resuscitating a few forgotten houseplants in a corner, and then she slowly starts to rebuild her life and her little balcony garden. This book is part memoir, autobiography, and part botanical history. All of Alice's own personal stories are mingled and fused with old botanical facts and stories about where the plants on your windowsill come from. It is very unique, but it is also very recognizable and relatable. It is all about putting roots down, finding a little quiet spot in a world that is spinning way too fast. Rootbound, Rewilding Alive by Alice Vincent. Now, I've always said I wasn't a big fan of the next book, but I'll have to admit that this book is the ideal depiction of a group of friends that you will probably have in your 20s, all with different lifestyles, with different backgrounds and different things going on in their lives. Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors has a myriad of characters. A whole cast of different people with different things going on in their lives, different financial backgrounds, different situations they're in. Some of them you might find very inspiring, some of them you might find very relatable, and others you'll simply hate. Yes, I have said in the past that this book is more vibes than anything else, and I will stand by it. But then again, that's sometimes how life goes. In your 20s, you have no idea what you're doing, and that's fine because no one else around you has either. And this book simply captures that feeling perfectly. Not one of my favorites, but I have heard a lot of people rant and rave about this one. They absolutely love it. So why not give it a chance? Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors. Now the next one is an absolute favorite of mine, and this book is amazing. Open Water by Caleb Azumah Nelson is the story of two people. They are both artists, one is a photographer, the other one is a dancer. They have just won some grants to just keep on studying, and it is the whole story about trying to be seen and to be noticed and trying to have ambitions in life, while on the other hand, you just want to be going on with your life and finding your place. But it is also a book about race and racism, about gender, about identity, and about how a world can see you as something totally different than you are. And it is also a love story, a beautiful but heartbreaking love story that will cause some emotional damage. Open Water is one of the most impactful debuts I have read in many years from now, and I'm looking forward to whatever book Caleb Azumah Nelson writes next. Open Water by Caleb Azumah Nelson. Then we have another classic, and it is a quintessential tale about a young woman going to live on her own for the first time in New York and finding herself isolated and all alone with her thoughts. The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath is a powerful book. Our main character, Esther Greenwood, has going everything in her favor. She's smart, she's beautiful, she's talented, and she's going under. And throughout the whole book you can witness and live through the whole breakdown that Esther is going through. For me, The Bell Jar is a story about mental health, about burnout, depression, isolation and loneliness. And to be honest, these are indeed the diseases and the sicknesses of our times. For a lot of young people in their 20s, in their 30s, this book might be just a tad too recognizable. And I do hope that it can be a trigger or an inspiration to go out, find help, find companionship and do something about it. This book can be dark, this book can be harrowing, but look at it as a form of self-care. Don't let whatever happens to Esther Greenwood happen to you. So yes, a book anyone in their 20s should absolutely read, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. Now life can be difficult, it can be confusing, it can be scary, but that's alright, because this is the trial run, the first attempt at creating a planet and a functional world. At least according to Pure Color by Sheila Heti. Now this book is something special. It is philosophical, I guess. It talks about how our world, our existence is the first draft. The first time that some god or gods out there made a world, and they are just looking on and seeing how we can cope. This book deals with mortality, with life and death, it deals with relationships, but it also deals with that feeling that no one of us really knows what we're doing. And that's just fine. It is a very unique book, it is beautifully written, and if you're a fan of annotating books, then this one is a treasure chest of citations and quotes and little thoughts and little nuggets of wisdom that you can find in between the pages, and it is an absolute joy to read. I promise this one is unlike any book you've ever read before. Pure Color, a novel by Sheila Heti. Now the 20s are often called your formative years, and this is the period that you form all of those habits. Both the good ones and the bad ones. When I first read this book, I think 2 years ago now, my first thought was that this book came too late. This is a book that I wish that I had access to in my 20s. Atomic Habits by James Clear is a non-fiction book. It is a self-help book, and it offers most of all insight into your own habits and your own life. It zooms in on all our little habits, both the good and the bad ones, and it explains why we often repeat our bad habits and fail to change them. Just the insight into your own behavior and your own, especially bad habits, is very confronting, but also very illuminating. Especially when the book tells you that it is not your fault that you fail to change yourself. Well, it takes a load off your shoulders. It also offers a framework and all kinds of methods and step-by-step plans to change your own behavior and your own bad habits like procrastination or making YouTube videos, and well, it helped me a lot, mostly. It gives you tools, it gives you strategies, but most of all it gives you insight, and I found it very illuminating. So, not counting Memoirs, the first real non-fiction book on this list, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Halfway there already, and if you're liking this video, do leave a like, do subscribe, and let's dive into the next 10 books you absolutely have to read in your 20s. And yes, the next one is another non-fiction book. Picture this. You're probably on social media. Maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's Instagram, and you post a photo or a reel, and then you're just refreshing. How many clicks, how many views, how many likes, and how many comments do you get? And what do they say about your self-worth? This is Status Anxiety by philosopher Alain de Botton. This book is one of my absolute all-time favorites non-fiction book. Everyone should read this book. In Status Anxiety, Alain de Botton, who is a philosopher, explores the whole idea, the whole feeling, why we feel unseen when, for example, someone does not return a phone call. It tugs at all of those invisible psychological threads that dominate our daily life, even if you don't know it. And especially if you think, I am not suffering from status anxiety, then you have to pick up this book, because I guarantee you, your eyes will open. I wouldn't call it a self-help book, but it will absolutely help you. Status Anxiety by Alain de Botton. And then we have something totally different. It is a graphic novel about a boy, a mole, a fox and a horse. And it is drawn and written by Charles Mackesy. This book is so beautiful. This book is so beautiful in so many ways. Yes, the artwork is inspiring, beautiful, gorgeous. It is a book you can simply flick through and marvel at all of those drawings. But the story and the dialogue inside is chef's kiss. Even after reading it for so many times, I still have trouble not tearing up every time I read through this story. Although it is a graphic novel, I assure you that this book will absolutely hit you in the feels. Each of these characters, the boy, the mole, the fox and the horse, is me, is you. It is ever so relatable, it is emotional, and it is utterly beautiful. There are two versions of this book on the market. One is the original one with the almost solely pencil drawings, and then the other one is the colored in one that was made after they remade the book into an animated film. I personally prefer the original one but have your pick. Whatever you do with your life, just make sure that you always have a copy of The Boy, the Mole, The Fox and the Horse by Charles Mackesy at hand. It is gorgeous. Every relationship has two persons, at least the relationships I've been in. And every relationship has two stories, two sides. And that is exactly what the next book is about. Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff is about a relationship, a marriage. Lotto and Matilda are that perfect couple that we all know, and they are getting married in their early 20s. They are madly in love and they are the envy of everyone around them. And then we go on and check in on them a decade later. Still married and still, in the eyes of the world, that perfect couple. Turns out that truth is very important in a marriage, but there's also secrets. And this book plays with them. This book zooms in and picks one side, then the other, and has a very unique way at looking at marriage and relationships. And this is the uniqueness of that book. It is all about those little lies, those kind lies. Well, don't call them lies, they are just truths never spoken. It is all about the dynamics of relationships, about the different roles in a marriage, and I found it very unique and very inspiring. The writing is beautiful, although a bit verbose at times, but that does not spoil the fun. Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff. And if you've been following along this channel for a while, you will know that I would not make a list without including some magical realism. This is again a book about mental illness and mental wellness. It is a book about grief, about loss, about making decisions and the consequences of those decisions. This is a book you will probably know. It is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And it is such a beautiful concept. We find this girl, Nora, who just isn't happy with whom she is. And she gets the chance to change the things that she wants to. And it is so unique as asking the question, what would you change in your life and what would be the consequences of that? And in the end, it is about the little things. The little things are just exactly what makes our lives great, and it has such a beautiful message. And I absolutely love this book. I know a lot of people do, and if you haven't read it, this is a book again everyone in their 20s and 30s and why not 40s and 50s should read. Not really plot driven, but beautifully written and an absolutely magical book. The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Now for the next one, kids, gather around because Grandpa is going to tell a story. A story about one of the absolutely important books from my 20s. One of the most influential books that I can remember reading in my 20s was The Silent Takeover by Norina Hertz. It helped form my ideas on economy, finances and geopolitical trade. And I've been an absolute huge fan of Norina Hertz ever since. Now Norina Hertz has never stopped writing, and her latest book, called The Lonely Century, might just be the book that you need in your 20s. The Lonely Century is about the disease of our times, loneliness. Even before the pandemic, who taught us to social distance from anyone around us, there was already this disease, this plague of loneliness starting. It is the whole social fabric of community that is unraveling, and we all live our lives all alone in the city, solitary, unseen. And it is not just a mental health crisis. In this book, Norina Hertz shows us the connection there is between loneliness and the depression that follows it, and, for example, heart disease, the risks to have serious diseases like cancer. Statistically speaking, feeling lonely, feeling truly lonely, is as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But we are fighting back. And the book also looks at how different communities all around the world are battling this sense of loneliness. From robot girlfriends to new ways of building towns, making neighborhoods, new forms of living together with different generations. There is a lot. And in the end, this book is not as depressing as you would think. It is rather hopeful, but it is also eye-opening, and I highly advise that anyone who loves non-fiction reads this one. The Lonely Century by Norina Hertz. Now, if you would ask me what is the one advice that you would give someone in their early 20s, then it would probably be just follow your heart and follow your dreams. And this book does just that. It is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. This book is a masterful story. It is a story of a young boy, a young shepherd who just dreams of taking off and walking across the desert and, finding the world out there. Discover it. But when he does, his journey teaches him that things were very different than he essentially thought, both in a good and a bad way. And essentially, it teaches him about who he is. And this book is such an inspiration. I myself, in my 20s, took off and traveled the world whenever I had the chance. And this book captures that feeling, that notion ever so well. It is a combination of magical wanderlust and, just having to spread your wings. But it is also about that fear of failure, that fear of the unknown that might just be an obstacle for you. An obstacle that keeps you from achieving your dreams and doing the things that you truly want and are passionate about. It is a book that says, just do it. What is the worst that can happen? And personally, I find that beautiful. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And yes, why not another memoir? And this one is powerful. In Educated, we meet the author Tara Westover. Now, Tara was a child of preppers, of survivalists who lived out there in the hills and didn't believe in formal education, they didn't believe in hospitals or healthcare, and they just taught their children that whatever they needed to survive in the mountains. And Tara is about 17 when she first set foot in a classroom. And from there on, she had to start learning to read, to do mathematics, to do just everything that is ever so normal for the rest of us. But she perseveres. She decides to self-teach all of these very basic things herself, just enough to be allowed to go to university. And from there on, she goes on to study history. And all of a sudden, she is confronted with all of those things that she never heard of before, like Second World War and the Holocaust, the Civil Rights Movement, all of these things in recent modern history that she simply did not know about. And it is a very powerful story from the moment that she decides to leave her family and in a way break the loyalty that she is expected to show her family and the grief that comes with it, all the way up to just venturing out in a very strange world to her and getting to know and getting to learn all of these essential things that are just basic everyday knowledge to you and me. You could call it a coming-of-age story, but it also offers very unique perspective on life and on all the things that we find and we take for granted. Even if you're not a fan of memoirs or autobiographies, do give this one a try, because Educated by Tara Westover is a very powerful story. And when talking about powerful stories, let's talk about How Do You Live by Genzaburo Yoshino. For me, this is the Eastern answer to Sophie's World by Jostein Gaarder. It is a philosophical book and it is a story told in two voices. On the one hand, we have the story of the young boy Copper and all of the problems that he finds navigating high school and friendship and his new forming life. And on the other hand, we have the voice of his uncle, who is his new father, I guess, after his own father died, and who offers him advice and insight and also corrects and congratulates him when he gets things wrong or right. And this book is best summarized with a quote, and I will read it to you. I think there has to come a time when everyone in the world treats each other as if they were good friends. Since humanity has come so far, I think now we will definitely be able to make it such a place. So I think I want to become a person who can help that happen. This is such a beautiful book, and while it is originally written for young readers, you can absolutely absolutely read it as an adult and you will enjoy it, I promise you. It is Miyazaki's favorite childhood book and it is probably one of mine as well. How Do You Live by Genzaburo Yoshino. Now, I don't know how punk rock and roll your 20s are, but mine certainly weren't. But luckily we have Patti Smith. In Just Kids, the rock and roll punk rock legend Patti Smith tells all about the story of her arrival in New York in her early 20s, her meeting up with Robert Mapplethorpe, the famous photographer, and just trying to find her career and her artistic integrity. And it doesn't always go really well. She has to steal to feed herself and, well, there are times that she just wants to give up on the artistic life. It is a story about finding yourself, it is a story about finding really meaningful relationships and even falling in love, but it is also a story with falling in love with a place, with a city, with New York. It is a story of living on the edge of poverty, trying to get by, the daily struggle and how it gets in the way of their artistic endeavors. And despite whatever you think of Patti Smith as a punk rock artist, she is a very gifted writer. There is something really poetical to her prose, and while this book is a lot of name dropping and just historical facts and going through her life, it is still a joy to read. At times funny, at times inspiring, at times heartbreaking. I actually enjoyed this book. The title says it all, Just Kids by Patti Smith. And then number 20, the last book for today, The Idiot. Not by Dostoevsky, but by Elif Batuman. This is the story of a young girl, a young woman, Selin. She's a daughter of Turkish immigrants. She's your typical high school overachiever, and all of a sudden she's plunged into the world of higher education and university and living on your own. And she's a bit lost for words. Now, here is where the book gets special, because forget all of the tropes, forget terms like a coming-of-age novel, forget all of that, because this book isn't that. The journey that Selin undergoes feels very true, very relatable, it feels like something that could happen. She's very naive and all of a sudden she's plunged into this very strange, multilingual, multicultural world that she has never heard of, and she starts to adapt. And this is not a book about finding yourself, this is a book about reinventing yourself. In a world of possibilities, Selin has to decide which paths that she will walk. And on top of all that, this book is incredibly witty and incredibly funny. Each character in the book, whether it is a main character or just an extra in the background, is described in such a way that it becomes someone that you know, that you've encountered. Now, I do know that a lot of people dislike this book. This is one of those books that you either rave and rant about or just DNF. I was the first category. I loved how relatable it was, how recognizable it was, and yeah, well, you'll have to give it a try for yourself. Last book for today, The Idiot by Elif Batuman. And now I want to hear from you. Which book or books defined your life? Which books have always stayed with you throughout your short or longer life? Let me know down below in the comments and we'll talk life-defining books some more. As always, thank you for watching. It means the world to me that you're here. Do leave a like, do subscribe, because it makes all of the difference. And in the meantime, if you need some more good bookish recommendations, that's easy. All you have to do is watch this video.